wanted to use
really sure.
Basically, we need to define the problem very carefully. And in this case, that means we want to say what we mean by pornography. We want to, and my concern about that, we may not all agree with that, is separate that from simply sexual images, which are not the problem. It's the sexually exploitive images. It is sexually violent and sexual derogatory and sexually exploitive images called sex, hijacking of sex, and really laying a claim to sex that we should not be confusing. It is defining the porn culture. It is defining the impact of the industry and the multiple layers of harm that you will be hearing about throughout this. And then it is saying we have to identify risk and protective factors because we have all been exposed to this toxicity. But we have different things that protect us from the harm. We have different risks that make us more susceptible to the harm. We need to understand those risk and protective factors. And what we know about research, from research, is that the more we build up protective factors, that actually does more to reduce the risk than just focusing on, here's the risk. So how do we build up your strengths? How do we build up your assets? And then we want to also, in that, we want to identify those for clearly the victims of the industry, for the users, for the people that work in the industry, for the partners and families of the users that are also affected, those ripple effects. And we know that pornography has a second-hand effect. So that is really key in a public health response, because even if I manage to protect my children from all of this in my home and in other people's home and anywhere they have their now mobile devices, they will be affected by the behaviors, the attitudes, and the expectations of other children and adults in their lives. That is a profound reason why this is a public health issue. And then we need to test our programs and rebuild them. We need to build on, fundamentally, a public health approach builds on the science. And the science, when people tell you there are no studies that show harm, and they will, even when you have 37 studies in front of you, there are studies that show harm, and there's related fields of study that show harm. And there is also knowledge from the field of what clinicians are seeing that you'll be hearing so much of. And in reality, there are also gaps in the research.